Hey Alexa, pull the lights on.
Sorry, I didn't find the comment.
Hey Alexa, lights in the lounge.
Hi, Sammy.
Morning, afternoon.
Morning, afternoon. Another one of
Evening. Try evening.
those. Good evening. Right.
Oh.
Sorry, as usual, fiddling about with my computer.
No.
You do? Da, da, da. So I just had a message saying somebody cook was going to be late. Was that any of you two?
Someone was saying I may be a few minutes late. I may not be.
Oh, I think Nikki's put that she can't
Right.
make it.
Okay, let's just have a look. Oh, is she? I missed that one. Let's have a look. All right, just now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just reply to her. Sammy,
Hello.
we're doing the Super New recall again.
Are
you
you?
done it
Brilliant.
already? Have you done it new method
Sunday.
yet? Sunday, right? Okay, good. So Claire, you're in for some fun. Being as
Yeah.
you're going to be going to make you run. And before then, any particular issues that you wanted to bring up straight away?
No, not really. We've been working on her jumping up when I'm serving her food, and she's doing really well with it. I'm telling her to sit, and she sits straight away. And then if I've got my hand out saying wait, she'll wait there. But if I put my hand to do something, she's up there again. But but she's doing really well, a lot better.
Tiny baby, so less jumping up.
Yes, a lot less. Yeah.
I think the thing is that always with any behaviour, do kind of either a written note or a mental note, but really do make sure that you notice, because quite often we will think that we've still got a problem when actually that problem is slowly going away.
Yeah.
We go into human sort of nag mode inside our own brains that our puppy's still doing whatever it is we hate, and actually they're doing it 50% less than they were before.
Yeah, she's
they're
doing
on
a lot less. She's doing really well.
So good idea to keep a little note. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it does mean that instead of getting into that kind of that frame of mind that we easily fall into, we can start to see that there is actually a gradient towards the right way.
Yes.
So I'm going to steal a slide straight from Kay, who is the person that I am copying, but I paid money and she says we're allowed to use her stuff. So we're going to have a look at a method of teaching recall that should set you off on the right path, so that once you put, I know with tiny puppies, they don't tend to want to wander too far away. So it's not as much of an issue when they're very young, because when they're very young, they tend to want to stick to us anyway. But this gets that habit into their brain. And what we're trying to develop is what they call a reflex recall. And a reflex is something that the brain doesn't have actually anything to do with. You don't think. It is simply a reaction. So blinking, for example, you blink before something hits your eye, not after it's hit your eye. Or when you put your hand down on a hot plate, by the time you realize that your hand's hot, your hand's already been removed. So your brain's had nothing at all to do with that decision. And we want to get a similar response when we call them away from something to come to us. We want them not to think about it. We want them just to react, just to respond, just to have a reflex. And the trouble with teaching a really good recall is that most people will have allowed their pups or their dogs to have practiced coming back when they're ready, and to have practiced finding out how brilliant it is staying away from the owner, you know, how access to other things is so rewarding. And actually the owner becomes a bit of a nag, a bit of a distraction away from all the fun stuff. And going back to the owner, yeah, it's not as good, you know, not as exciting. I'm going to just do a little bit of calculating. So too much brain going on there. Yeah, too much thinking, too much calculating, and then not enough reinforcement and reward. So we're going to tip the balance in the other direction. So the first thing we need to think about with pups is too much freedom isn't a good thing. And even at this age now, especially now, I would strongly recommend that pups be on some sort of a long line or on a very long lead, so that they can get to see the world and smell the world and move around freely in it, but that they can't go into situations that you feel that you're going to need to call them away from until you can use your, because single time we call up and are able to ignore us, so that they can the owner than it is being with the owner, then they're developing that habit of enjoying being away from us more than they do being with us. Does that make sense? So I know it's a bit of a drag, and especially with tinies, because tinies don't tend to want to go too far away from you, so you kind of feel like you don't need the lead. But you're not going to be using it all of the time. You're not going to be restraining them. It's just so that if they do suddenly go to something that you're, or towards something you're worried about, you're able to slow them down and stop them getting into trouble. Does that all make sense? And then you're not going to need to recall them, because you're not going to allow them to get into that difficult problem in the first place. Okay, so a bit of a, literally a drag, having a long line on, because they are dragging a lead around with them. But I would strongly recommend with your long line, and hopefully you know what I mean by long line by now. Yeah, strongly recommend with your long line that you use a harness, that it's not fastened to a collar, just in case they do run into the end of the lead. You know, I know you're not going to use it as a fishing line, you're not going to drag your dog back with it, but they could sometimes, you might not be watching, and they could sometimes run at full pace into the end of the line. It's better if they do that on a harness, so that all of that weight is distributed onto the body and not just onto the neck. Still not nice even on a harness, so it is actually our responsibility to be constantly watching what they might get into and noticing that they're taking off before they build up the big speed, and slow them down with your slow braking. Yeah. So, do you need me to go over any long line stuff before we carry on? I know we haven't necessarily done long lines. Did maybe touch on it a little bit, but not full on. It's a full lesson all on its own. I've done 4-hour sessions on just teaching people how to handle long lines, you know, so it's quite involved. But we're going to play some games, which is so much more fun than talking about technicalities. All right, so we need some treats and we need a dog. So I'll just go and get a dog and some treats. I bet you're more prepared than me. I've got enough floor on show, probably. I want Dodo. Here's the Dodo. Okay, so the first game is called Runaway Recall. And when you're talking about training a recall, you want a word that isn't going to be said in normal conversation and is going to be something that you're only ever going to use in this kind of picture. So the dog develops that instant reflex response. Okay, so we're going to suddenly, for no reason whatsoever, say our word, and mine is, and immediately move after you've said here. You don't have to move far, but then you're going to put a piece of food down. So I'm standing around doing nothing, and then I go, and what we get in here is movement. The dog is likely to move because you moved, and when they move, food happens. So literally 1 or 2 steps after you've said it, and then the food goes straight down. So they call it, say it, do it, feed it. And we'll just show you that. If I can find the right screen. Oh, here we go. So can you see, Sammy, does that now say 1, 2, 3? No, I haven't done it right then. Okay. Oh, did it for a second? That's it. Okay, so you should have a thing there, picture that says recall 1, 2, 3. So number 1 is this one, which is run away, recall. So we go, and I move and I feed. And we say, and I move and I feed. We want a little bit of excitement from the dog. We want the dog going, when they hear you say that word, we want to see them go, yeah, like they've just put their paw on a hot plate. Something shocking and surprising and fun's just happened. So watch Dodo's face for a second. I'll just put him on big screen. We've been doing this a little while. So if you just watch his face, you go, we're just standing around doing nothing, and I go, turn around to the screen, yeah. You see, he almost started moving before I did. I don't know how much of a view you get on Zoom, but can you see fine enough detail on there to see when I go, he's already going like this. Does that make sense? Nod or thing, thumbs up if you saw it. I know it's hard on Zoom. Okay, so the second game is actually the one we get mixed up, is actually the one called Say It, Do It, Feed It. So this time, now we're looking to see, have we actually got that response? Have we actually got that little surprise shock? So what I'm looking for is when I say it, does Dodo look up and suddenly start wanting to move with me? So I go, and you can see he'd already taken the step before I moved. Yeah? So now we can get into a little pattern. Now we can do this little pattern thing where I go, and I throw him away, and I can throw him away again. So as soon as he looks up, I'm going to say it, yeah, and I'm going to start to look as if I might move away from him, and then I'm going to roll it away, and that rolling it away means that I get an opportunity to call him back again. I get an opportunity to use my little recall signal again. Does that make sense? Remember, a little move after you've said it, little move. Yeah, so we want, first of all, they look up, then we say, come here, then we dodge a little bit, and then we toss the food away. And as they turn around, call again, and start that little pattern over. So we've got a little reflex response starting. Now what we need to do is we need to get the dog listening out for when it might happen again. And what we actually want now is them watching us. So we've heard, they can hear us and they're listening for that cue. But what we want is them to start wanting us to say the cue. All right? So to begin with, we're going to start with just watching our movement. And put you on speaker. Okay. So this time, feet planted. We're not moving the feet. The feet aren't going nowhere. But we are going to dodge, weave. Okay, look at his face. Yeah? Is this dog running off, getting into trouble, or is he going, she's going to do it any minute now? Okay? So, dodging and weaving. To begin with, you can have food in both hands, but keep them out of the way. Yeah? I'm going to dodge and weave, and then maybe the food will go that way. So it's just body language to begin with. Feet plant, dodge and weave, and maybe it's going that way. And maybe it's going that way. So we get them really watching us because they don't know which hand it's going to come from. They don't know which direction it's going to go into. When they're looking at you already, yeah, help them find it. She's happy. Okay, as soon as they're looking at you, you can start playing and dodging and weaving again. So they're watching, watching, watching. Beautiful. Okay, beautiful. And what you should find with these 2 games that we've done so far, 3 games, I guess, that we've done so far, your dog should start to really hang out with you and not want to move away from you. They should want to be looking for you, looking at you, keeping your attention, wondering what you're going to do next. So now we can mix it up a little bit because any dog, any dog that is starting to feel that they're old enough to go off and start doing their own thing are going to start judging the owner as being a bit boring in relation to the rest of the world. And if we always do exactly the same thing, even if it was a fun game when we started, then it can become the same old, same old, same old. So what we need to do is add unpredictability to that fun. So you've got 3 different games. You can run away and recall. Yeah, so there's that chase element along with the sound of your recall word. We've got your telling them the recall word and then running away from them and feeding them. So it's a little bit, we're swapping the direction, I guess. On the first one, you're running and then calling. On the second one, you're calling and then running. And I know it seems like a small change, but to the dog it's quite a large change. Then you've got your dodge and dive, and we're going to add an extra element to the dodge and dive. We're going to do dodge and dive and run. Okay, so the way that goes is like this. What I'm going to do is I've got my feet still and I'm dodging and I'm diving, but what I'm going to do is just before I actually move, I'm going to go and I'm going to say it and then move. So dodging and diving, I'm going to go. Does that make sense? So I might move. Oh, looks like I've gone dead. Lost my connection. Probably no. I'm back. Apparently. Right. Thumbs up. Tell me I'm still connected because I had a bit of a moment then. Yeah. Okay. So dodge and dive. And then you're going to do a little movement, little step, doesn't have to be far, but when you're out in the wild, you can add more steps on if you like. And as soon as they catch up with you, you're going to drop that food. So dodging and diving and weaving and being silly, but keeping your feet in the same place, and then you're going to go. And what you should see is dog do that. I can see Dodo doing that. He's going, so exciting. Yeah. Easier when you're out in the wild doing it, but obviously when you're out in the wild, to begin with, I would do it in different rooms in the house and then do it in the garden. And when you do finally go out where there are other distractions, try to find a big empty space where the distractions aren't too close, and obviously be on a long line so that it doesn't matter. So in a minute, we're going to add all those games up and we're going to mess it about. For now, let's just have a think about the human element of this. We get ourselves very much into the frame of mind that our dog has to do something to earn something. And what can happen with that is that the dog can start to feel pressurized. They can start to feel like everything is hard work, you know? And what we're trying to bring back into this, and especially recall, is the dog choosing. The dog choosing to come to us, the dog choosing to be with us. And if we allow our mind to slip back into that frame of mind where we're expecting, and they don't do it, and therefore we don't think we need to reward them or encourage them, we feel like we've got to get grumpy with them. Well, we want to stop ourselves from going there, because the dog's then going to start to feel that actually being with us isn't that much fun anyway. So we're not adding things onto this yet. We're not adding things like come to me and sit, or come to me and I'll grab your collar, because those sorts of things can really put the dog off. We want come to me and have fun, and then you can do your own thing again. And it's about the dog wanting to come to you, finding out that you're fun, finding out that chasing after you means something good's going to happen. And it doesn't have to be food. If you've got a dog who adores playing tug, you can have a tugger hiding under your jacket so it's not obvious. And then when you say your recall word, the tugger suddenly becomes available and you're running off with it. So that when they catch you, they can have a tug game. All right, does that make sense? Any questions about that minute? Did you find yourself, because I certainly, it's something that Kay's very much brought to my mind, is that frustration when you call them and they're not responding. Did you find yourself feeling that at all? And wanting to kind of know what to do about it? I'll put you on, you speak to us, take you off mute.
Yeah, definitely. And I've found that I'm calling her back too much as well. And this week, that's something I've been working on with myself, like trying to just let her do her own thing, and not just call her back every time she stops. Because I think they become desensitized to their own name, don't they? And she's like, hears it, and she's like, no, I don't need to respond to that. So I've been working on that this week.
I mean, Kay had a really good analogy for that. She said, imagine if you were watching a really good movie or reading a really good book and someone just kept coming into the room and interrupting you. You know, you'd respond, wouldn't you? Because it's polite and you've got a reflex response to your name because that's what you've been taught from being tiny. But eventually, after the fourth or fifth time, you'd be like, no, you know, you'd be blanking them and properly ignoring them. And that's because if we are calling them too often away from all the good stuff, then they are going to start to choose the good stuff over us, no matter how rewarding we are. And we don't want to get into that habit of nagging or pleading or begging our dogs to come back to us. But what I would say then on that subject is, if your dog just happens to nip over and say, hi, you all right? You must respond every single time. Not necessarily always with food, but I mean, I do like to say, oh, thanks, here, have a bit of food. You know, because if your dog is thinking about you when they're out in the wild and there's all those exciting and interesting things to look at and chase, I want to say thanks for involving me. I want to get excited by the fact that my dog wants to involve me in their doggy stuff. So if they come in and they call it a check-in, if they come in and they have a look, or if they just look over their shoulders, always respond. Always give them a nod and a smile, or they're close enough, a tickle, or if they want a bit of food, give them a bit of food. I like to count check-ins. So anything for me, if my dog is not checking in every sort of 15 seconds, I want to know why. Are they becoming a bit disengaged from me? Is the world more interesting than me? Do I need to start doing something a bit more exciting? And so a check-in for me doesn't have to be the dog comes all the way back over to you, because imagine how annoying that must be if you have to come all the way back to the owner every single time. But if they'll glance over their shoulder and I see that they've checked where I am, then I start counting. And I do it subconsciously now. So I do know when it's been longer than 15 seconds. You know, I just notice subconsciously that it's been longer than 15 seconds. And then if I think it has been, then I'll do a quick count. And if it is, then I start thinking, oh, it's time for me to up my game. You know, it's time for me to start being unpredictable, running away, hiding a little bit, things like that. All right, so all those games. It's not about being perfect at it, and it's not about your dog always responding. It's about you getting excited when you see them starting to think, oh, it's that word. It's about you getting excited when they choose to chase after you and to be with you instead of getting excited and interested in the rest of the world. All right? So put the ones together that you got, and then I'm going to give you a couple more different games to play when you're out and about.
Touch. Touch. That's something I wanted to ask. Our recall word is touch. I always say touch and then she comes and touches my hand. But with me doing this, can I use that word? Is that okay? Because she's not touching.
Sorry, darling, you're breaking up a bit, so I'm only hearing every third or fourth word at the minute. So you're calling her and you're asking her to touch. What's the question? Does she need to touch your hand? If you're doing a touch recall, which is one of the games I'm going to show you, then I would say yes. But if you're wanting just a normal recall, to begin with, the normal recall doesn't mean the dog has to come all the way to you. You're using it as a way of getting them to move away from things in the environment that might potentially be dangerous. It depends. I think, again, we're looking at if it's difficult for the dog, it'll tend to put them off and it will tend to reduce their response rate. And response rate is how quickly they move away and turn away from the thing that they were doing, and how quickly they move towards you. And if either of those two are falling, then our recall's starting to mess up. We want them always to be maintained at good speed, you know, and different breeds, different speeds. But for your little one, then she should be able to turn on a dime and be on her way back to you within split seconds, really. Yeah. So touch recall, I love touch recall, but again, if your dog's not really into touch and isn't really excited by the idea of that target, then maybe it's a bit too pressuring for a normal recall session. Does that make sense? Yeah. Is that kind of the answer in the question you were trying to ask me? Because I couldn't hear you, you were breaking up. Okay, so we might as well do touch recall then, being that's the one you've just brought up. And let me put me on speaker view. So touch recall is literally touch and toss. And touch and toss. And he called that one, that was a bit clever. That didn't move in very far away, did it? So you saw then what I did was a little bit of dodge, and I added the touch coming from the other hand. So again, that tiny little bit of unpredictability. You saw him coming to the side of me where the touch hand had been previously. He saw that I'd swapped hands. He changed midway on his way to me. So you can tell he's really interested. He's really wanting to follow. So there's ways we can make the game just a little bit more interesting. So and he's going that way, and as he comes this way, okay. So it's not always that he's coming back into the same position. Okay, so let's have a look and see what she thinks of touch. Okay, and again, it's all about that habit. Get back to the person, get back to the person, and if we can, getting that reflex response to the sound as well. Okay, beautiful. We got another game. I love this game. You like all of these games, I can tell. You two have got a brilliant relationship. Okay, so imagine that your puppy's gone off and they've got really engaged in something. This is a little game that's going to practice for what do you do? What do you do when your puppy's really engaged in something? And first of all, you're going to practice this in a situation where there isn't that much to get engaged with. There isn't that much interesting or exciting. And what we want is 2 or 3 bits of food. We're being quite generous with this game, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to, while they're looking away, which is a bit hard to get to demonstrate with Dodo, we're suddenly going to go and we're going to look at something, a bit of grass or under a plant pot, or we're going to look at the environment, we're going to get interested in it. And then we're going to say something along the lines, and you choose your own little statement that, woo, look at this. Okay? Woo, look at this. Woo, look at this. Woo, look at this. Woo, look at this. And see if you can get away from them. That's quite a nice little game if your puppy's got themselves stuck staring at something and they've been staring for longer than sort of 10 seconds and they don't seem to be able to be disengaging from it, then you could suddenly find something more interesting without having to try and nag them into being with you. You are looking at something else that you get excited about. Yeah? So it's not about begging them or nagging at them to pay attention to what you're paying attention to. It is, oh, I found something really good and I'm excited by it. And then the dog comes over and they go, well, what is it? And then they find out it's food or it's the favourite toy that you didn't tell them that you had in your pocket when you set off for your walk. Yeah, and it's suddenly there. It's suddenly a surprise. I'm tired now. I've got to go and remind myself as well what else I'm supposed to go over. I feel like I've covered a lot, but at the same time, not really covered a lot. Yeah, no, brain's gone dead. So, talk amongst yourselves for a moment. I speak to you. Samuel, keep busy. She might look back on her previous notes and remind me of something I haven't covered yet. If you unmute yourselves. Sammy's reading now. I'll go and have a look as well. She's gone silent. Look.
No.
Oh, still. She might have lost connection. She's so still. Maybe her connection's gone. Yeah. She's not.
No.
Oh, yeah, there she is. Follow me. Can you unmute yourself and have a word? She's having trouble with the computer, I think. Let me have a quick look.
It has broke up a bit tonight, hasn't it?
It has. Not as bad as the other night. The class just completely crashed. The whole lot went. It was horrible. It's the first time it's happened to me.
Oh, nightmare.
Let's have a look.
Georgie.
Oh no, don't want that. I've just opened the video of the okay, I'll show you what I'm looking at and then you'll be able to join in. So, don't think you can read that from there, I don't think. Okay, let's have a look at this.
Oh, Georgie, what's this?
So having a look on this list of things here, we're looking at the point of view of recognizing that you have different feelings about recall than your dog does. Yeah? So can you see that all right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So the skills that we want to develop in the dog are anticipation. So that's what we're talking about, that reflex response and looking forward and getting excited about the potential that maybe the owner's going to say that word, or maybe the owner's going to run, or maybe the owner's going to find something exciting and I can join in with them. So that's that anticipation, that excitement about being with the owner and following the owner and doing things with the owner. Then you've got the emotional response, and quite often dogs' emotional response to a recall signal, and you'll see it all the time in the park, is the owner calls the dog and the dog goes, oh, not again, you know, and you can see their head go down and their shoulders come forward, and and it always makes me think of when I was a kid and my mum used to call me by my full name when I was in trouble. So I would be downstairs and I'd hear her go, Julianne, and be like, you know. So we want to keep that emotional response on the good side. We want them feeling happy when they hear that recall signal. We never want to use it in a harsh way or in a way that makes them feel threatened. Focus, we're already starting to see, even on this, in these first few games, that the dog becomes reluctant to lose sight of what you might do next. So that's focus. Yeah. Listening, obviously, is listening out, the anticipation for that sound. Is she going to do it? Is she going to do it now? What if she does it now? Yeah. Speed, obviously, we've had a word. If the puppy's speed is starting to get slower each time you call them, you're either calling them too often, or your reward in comparison with the environment is not worth it, you know, or the pup's getting tired. You know, they've already had a decent walk, or they're getting full. So you keep an eye on the speed. Does the dog keep an eye on you? So the check-ins, are they checking in to see where you are and what you're doing? Are they staying alert to you, not just to the environment, not just looking out for birds that they could chase or other dogs that they could run over to or other people they could run over to, but are they keeping alert to where you are and what you're doing? Are they actually turning quickly when you call them? Or are they kind of going, in a minute? You know, I only have one law with regards to recall. If my dog is literally on the point of going to the toilet, so they were just about to go and then I called them, and then they're allowed to say, just hang on a minute while they go to the loo. But then I expect they'll come back straight after that. So that's my only rule. Is it actually rewarding for the dog? You know, if you're, as we said before, if you're calling the dog away from good stuff all of the time, then the reward needs to be of equal or higher value than whatever it is you're calling them away from. And what if the effort to come back to you is too much? You know, what if your pup's already tired and you're still calling them and they've got to come all the way back? Oh, you know, even if you've had a huge slab of beef and you've asked them to run 100 meters to get back to you, if they're tired already, that reward is maybe not going to be up to the job anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be predictable. You know, even if it's fun to begin with, if it's the same fun over and over, it can become boring. And it says avoiding distractions, and this actually means the dog might be avoiding you as a distraction away from the interesting stuff they're already doing. All right, so consider yourself the distraction. You're not the most important thing sometimes in your dog's mind. So if you are going to ask them to pay attention to you, it's got to be worth it for them. And for you, how to deal with distractions. You know, the first thing we've got to remember is if the dog doesn't already have a good recall in low distraction environments, they're certainly not going to have a recall to you in high distraction environments. They're going to be much more switched on to the world than they can be to you. When we need to do eye contact skills, which I had forgotten. So eye contact, it's the only way you know that your dog's actually really paying attention to you. And a lot of dogs, because we use food so much, become very focused on the hands, which with your touch recall, that does ask them to focus on the hands, but we also need for what you're going to do if you can't wave your hands around. What if you're carrying things? What if you've got other dogs on the lead? and both hands are already busy. Yeah, so having more than one way to recall them. Waiting for engagement, so that's about us not getting into that owner frame of mind where we expect that our dog will do something. We need to learn to wait, because the more we wait, the more that they choose to come back, the better that's going to be in the long run. So not nagging, waiting for engagement. Being spontaneous, that's really hard, you know. We do run into these patterns in our brains where we tend to do the same things the same way, walk the same direction. That's normal, that's human. And that's just what we do. But we want to try and avoid that as much as possible, so that spontaneity and fun becomes part of the walk, part of the things we do together. Keeping it real, I love this one when she was explaining this, because you've got to get inside the dog's mind and think about the fact that in not every circumstance are you the absolute best thing in that environment, you know. So if your dog has found the best sniff in the world, don't always be trying to get them away from it, because that's just, you're not a good friend, are you? If you don't let your dog stop and look at the flowers, or, you know, if someone took me around the Natural History Museum and wouldn't let me look at the dinosaur bones and read all the little cards, I wouldn't want to go back there with them. You know, we want our dog to want to be with us, so we've got to do some and allow them to do some of the stuff that they need to do. Remember that your toolbox, so that's all these little games that we've had a little word about now. Don't just use the one, use them all and swap it up and change it. And sometimes it's food as a reward, sometimes it's toys and play as a reward, sometimes it's chasing you as the reward. And be patient, obviously. You've got a baby. Baby dogs don't know everything. They're not born understanding the human, and they're going to get it wrong. So expect that. So we'll do eye contact, and then there was a do's and don'ts list somewhere, which I'll show you in a minute. I can find it somewhere. Yeah, that one. I'll look at that in a minute. Okay, so eye contact. This is the eye contact game. Oh, which Dodo loves. Put you on gallery. So this time, toss the puppy away and wait. When you get eye contact, toss them away and wait. So he's trying to look at the side of my face. That's not going to work. Trying really hard to look at the side of my face. So what I'd like for him to figure out, and I might have to help him if he can't figure it out, I'd like him to figure out to come round and look at it. So I moved ever so slightly, so I wasn't all the way side on to it. Okay, so that's one little eye contact game you can try. Let's have a quick bash at that. And remember, the dog's trying to get your eye contact, not you forcing your eye contact on the dog. We all do it, you know. We all do that thing where we lean forward and try and put our eyes right where they can see them in case they can't see them. Well, your dog knows where your eyes are. So just keep your hands still, keep the food out of the way and wait. As long as your yes, the verbal happens when their eye contact happens and then the food is tossed afterwards, then they will find your eyes. And this is really good because it's practicing for your check-ins, because we're not asking them to look at us. We're just saying, if you happen to find my eyes and look into my eyes, then I'm going to reward you. They don't have to come all the way back. They don't have to do anything else. It's an if you can game. Okay, now there's a much harder one. Much harder variety. Dodo finds this really hard. So with this one, what we're going to do, we are going to hold a piece of food out, but out of reach. And we're going to wave yes for the dog to look at our face instead of that hand. Yes. She's actually getting that. She didn't do very well the first time we did it. Yes. So we're waiting for a quick glance at the face instead of at the hand. Yes. And then the food gets dropped. And again, if you think about the fact that we've done lots of feeding from the hand up to now, and lots of luring, it's a really hard concept for the dog. Yeah? So if they're finding it really, really difficult to begin with, you could start with the hand just literally right next to your head. So it's a bit easier. And then you can slowly start to take that arm further away. And we're just looking for that tiny glance. And we're going to mark it to tell them they got it right with a little yes or whatever your marker is. And then we're going to drop that piece of food. Really hard for you, doggy. This is about us being really patient to help them to figure it out. And this is what Dodo was like on his first go. Literally, I thought it's never going to happen. You can pull silly faces. Quite often sticking your tongue out will help because the dog will suddenly look at why your face moved. Nice, I like that one. That was a beautiful one at the end there. Okay, then we got some do's and don'ts. If I can find my screen. Okay, so this is a bit full on. I'll post this to just this little bit. I'll post to the page. Okay, so somebody was heartbroken. I shared this with them the other day. Never chase your dog. And she was absolutely heartbroken. So, I'm always chasing my dog. Why don't chase your dog? Well, it can be fun, but think about what they're practicing. They're practicing running away from you. And we don't want that habit of running away from you, especially in exciting circumstances. Because imagine if you're trying to chase them to catch them, you know, at some point in the future, we don't want their response to already be habit to run away when you're chasing. Don't ask for a sit when you're recalling. We want that excitement, and there's enough learning going on without them getting the pressure of having to do something else. We can put those on later. When the recall's really sparkly and we're not at risk of damaging it, then we can start adding other things like sit or, you know, the stuff that might put them off coming back a bit. Don't ever, while you're training it, do not call them when they've facing away from you. So if you've tossed the food away, you wait for them to turn before you say your recall cue again. Because what we don't want ever is for the dog to hear that cue, but not be already on their way back, or definitely more likely to come back. Yeah, so don't say it unless they're already looking at you. Don't give the food to the mouth. We want this to be fun. We want them to be looking. We want them to be searching and getting that food skittering away from them so that they have to go run after it or find it. And some dogs are quite sensitive, you know, if they've come back to you and you reach towards them to give them the food, some dogs are, they're not sure whether or not you're trying to grab at them or grab at the collars. So we want the food allowing them to move again. Yeah, no, a lot of people, she said, don't touch the dog. And the reason that she said that is, and I see it all of the time, people will get really excited that the dogs come back to us and they'll go lean forward to the dog and they'll scrunch their dog and the dog's going pulling away. You know, they're really uncomfortable with it and it's not what they were expecting. So if you've got the kind of dog that absolutely adores being touched, and Dodo is one of those, and they run into your arms and they want tickles and pulls, don't go to the head, go to the body, go to the back end, to the bum, to the shoulder area. Don't go ears and head. And if you're not sure that they absolutely love it, then just don't do it. Yeah, because it will tend to make them want to hang back away from you. All right, any questions about any of that? No. Okay, so we're done. I think it's like a crash recall course. It's yeah, I'm still learning it all. I mean, a lot of it, I was thinking when I was watching her stuff, and I'm still watching it, learning it. A lot of it I do anyway, but I haven't ever sort of put it all together in a sensible way, let's say. So, yeah, I like the idea of slowly building onto the skills. So getting the dog that sparkly response just to that recall cue before you then start adding and you come to me. We're not going there yet. We're going to go with you've got to catch me or you've got to follow me to get that. You choose, and we're going to keep it really, really sparkly, and doesn't matter if you get it wrong, because if you don't, well, we're never going to set them up to get it wrong. We're never going to call them unless they're already in that get back to mum, it's that game type of frame of mind. Does that make sense? So we're not going to use it out in the wild. We're going to use the long line out in the wild until we know. And I had, yeah, I got all fired up a couple of weeks into Kay's course. I thought, oh, you know, Dodo's recall's pretty good, except when it isn't. You know. So I was in the middle of People's Park, and on the big green space in the middle, and we'd already done quite a lot of recalling and stuff with the long line on, and that green space was empty, and it wasn't too busy around the edges, and I thought, oh, here we go, off the lead. And the first time I tossed him away with food, as I tossed the food, I saw at the corner of my eye a lurcher greyhound set off from the other diagonal, so that Dodo was going that way and the lurcher greyhound was going to basically cross his path like this. And luckily I'd seen it coming out the corner of my eye, and as it got to about here, I'd said my recall word. Dodo had turned and was on his way back to me as the dog went past the spot that he would have been. So I would say it works, you know. I'm going to be pretty happy to start training the recall course once it starts. So you've just got a little taster of it. All right, so that's us for tonight. Are you quite happy with all of that? Anything that you really enjoyed? Do you want to talk to me, or do you just want me to say goodbye? Again, say goodbye. Yeah. You can if you like or not.
Yeah, no, we really enjoyed it. It was a really good class. I think Georgie enjoyed it, and we'll definitely work on that this week.
Anything
Well, I
new,
think-
Sammy?
I think it's absolutely fascinating. I can't believe. Look at my notes. Look at my notes. Yeah, no, it is such a positive thing, and I think it is really the way you're putting it across is, you know, you're going to do it. It gives me confidence that we can do this. Yeah, we can do this. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Archie's good with his recall anyway, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. To be
Yeah.
fair.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank
See
you
you
so
later.
much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.